Zextay stared at the data screen with tired eyes. Another report about the humans had arrived from the outer colonies. He rubbed his scaled forehead and sighed. For 3 months now, these reports kept coming in with the same ridiculous claims. The humans were dangerous, they said. The humans were different, they warned. The humans turned war into an art form, they claimed. Zextay could not understand why everyone was so afraid of these new creatures. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. The Corvani Empire had been traveling between stars for 10,000 years. His people had built cities on 100 worlds, while humans were still fighting with metal sticks on their single planet. He picked up another report from his desk. This one came from the Zelani, a trading species that lived near human space. According to the Zelani ambassador, entire fleets of their people had fled from human territory. They spoke of humans with fear in their voices, calling them the hunters and the species that never stops fighting. Zextay laughed softly. The Zelani were known for being nervous about everything. They probably ran away because humans looked different from them. Many species did that when they first met new aliens. He opened his computer and pulled up the human files. The pictures showed bipedal creatures with smooth skin and small bodies. They had only 2 eyes and no natural weapons like claws or sharp teeth. Their technology was basic compared to Corvani standards. Their ships were slow and their weapons were simple. How could anyone fear such primitive beings? His assistant, Velkara, entered the office carrying more files. She placed them on his desk with a worried expression on her face. "Sir, we have received 3 more reports from species near human space," she said. "They all tell similar stories." Zextay did not look up from his screen. "Let me guess. The humans are terrible monsters who eat children and destroy planets for fun?" Velkara's tail twitched nervously. "Actually, sir, the reports say humans are very polite and friendly. But they also say that when humans fight, they never give up. Ever. They say humans will keep fighting even when they cannot win." "Sounds like stupidity to me," Zextay replied. "Any intelligent species knows when to surrender." He opened another file. This one contained an interview with a refugee from the Gorath species. The Gorath were known as fierce warriors who had conquered 12 star systems before meeting humans. According to the refugee, humans had defeated the entire Gorath military in 6 months. Zextay frowned. The Gorath were not easy to defeat. Their warriors were 3 times larger than humans and had natural armor, but the report claimed that humans had won by using tactics the Gorath had never seen before. "Velkara, pull up the military analysis of human capabilities," he ordered. The data appeared on his screen. Human ships were indeed slower than Corvani vessels, but they carried more weapons per ton of mass. Human soldiers were physically weaker than many species, but they used tools and teamwork to overcome this disadvantage. Their manufacturing capacity was impressive for such a young spacefaring race. Still, none of this explained the fear in these reports. Zextay's communication device buzzed. A message from the High Council appeared on his screen. He read it quickly, then read it again to make sure he understood correctly. The Corvani Empire was preparing to expand into human territory. The Council had decided that human space contained valuable resources that the Empire needed. Since humans were clearly inferior to the mighty Corvani, the expansion would be simple and profitable. The Council wanted Zextay to prepare intelligence reports on human defenses and important targets. Zextay smiled. Finally, he would have a chance to prove that all these fearful reports were wrong. When Corvani ships arrived in human space, these primitive creatures would surrender quickly. They would realize they could not fight against 10,000 years of Corvani military experience. He began working on his report immediately. According to his research, humans had colonies in 47 star systems. Their main military bases were clearly marked on their own star charts, which showed how naive they were about hiding strategic information. Their largest fleet was stationed near a planet called Earth, which appeared to be their homeworld. The Corvani could easily avoid the main fleet and attack the outer colonies first. Without their military ships to protect them, human civilians would have no choice but to surrender. It would be a quick and clean conquest. As he worked, Zextai thought about his career. A successful intelligence operation against the humans would certainly earn him a promotion. The council would see that he had been right to dismiss the fearful reports from other species. He might even earn a position in the Central Intelligence Division. His communication device buzzed again. Another report had arrived, this one from a species called the Minari. Zextai almost deleted it without reading, but something made him open the file. The Minari claimed that humans had helped them fight off an invasion by robot ships from an unknown enemy. The humans had not asked for payment or territory in return. They had simply arrived when the Minari called for help, fought alongside them, and left when the battle was over. This confused Zextai. Why would humans help strangers without wanting something in return? It made no strategic sense. Perhaps the humans were planning to invade Minari space later and wanted the Minari to trust them first. He made a note in his report about this strange human behavior. The council should know that humans might use false friendship as a weapon. By the end of the day, Zextai had finished his intelligence summary. Human military forces were spread thin across many systems. Their technology was inferior to Corvani weapons. Their tactics appeared to be based on quantity rather than quality. The Corvani Empire could conquer human space within 1 year, possibly less. As he prepared to leave his office, Velkara approached him again. "Sir, I have been reading these reports all day," she said quietly. "I think there might be something we are missing about the humans." Zextai gathered his files and stood up. "The only thing we are missing is why everyone is so afraid of such a weak species. When our fleets reach human space, all these silly reports will be proven wrong." He left the office feeling confident and excited. Soon, the Corvani Empire would have new territory, new resources, and new glory. And Zextai would be remembered as the intelligence officer who had seen through the lies and prepared the way for easy victory. He had no idea how wrong he was. 3 weeks later, Zextai sat in the main conference room of the Corvani flagship. The first official meeting with human representatives was about to begin. He felt excited to finally meet these creatures that had caused so much fear across the galaxy. The human delegation arrived in a small ship that looked fragile compared to Corvani vessels. Zextai watched through the viewing screen as 3 humans walked through the docking tube. They wore simple dark uniforms and carried no visible weapons. The lead human was a female with short brown hair and calm eyes. She introduced herself as Ambassador Sarah Chen. Her 2 companions were military officers who stood quietly behind her. "Welcome aboard our vessel," said Admiral Kethvar, the Corvani fleet commander. "We are honored to make formal contact with your species." Ambassador Chen smiled politely. "Thank you, Admiral. We hope this meeting will begin a long friendship between our peoples." Zextai studied the human woman carefully. She seemed relaxed and confident, but not arrogant. Her voice was steady, and her movements were controlled. She did not act like someone who was afraid or trying to hide something. The negotiations proceeded smoothly. The Corvani requested access to several star systems that contained valuable minerals. To Zextai's surprise, the humans agreed to most of the demands with little argument. They only asked that any Corvani mining operations should not interfere with human shipping routes. "Your terms are very reasonable," Ambassador Chen said. "We want to avoid any conflict between our species. Perhaps we could also arrange for scientific exchanges. Our researchers would love to learn about Corvani technology." Admiral Kethvar agreed immediately. Sharing basic technology with inferior species was a common practice that helped maintain good relations. The humans would receive some simple manufacturing techniques, and the Corvani would gain access to new territories without fighting. After the meeting, Zextai felt vindicated. The humans had behaved exactly as he had predicted. They recognized Corvani's superiority and chose cooperation over futile resistance. All those fearful reports from other species had been completely wrong. For the next 2 months, regular diplomatic exchanges continued. Human scientists visited Corvani research facilities, and Corvani experts toured human industrial centers. Everything seemed to be proceeding perfectly. Then Zextai noticed something strange in the intelligence reports. Human communication traffic had increased by 300% since first contact began. Their scientists were asking very detailed questions about Corvani military equipment, ship designs, and biological research. Most concerning of all, humans seemed to be studying every aspect of Corvani society and technology with remarkable intensity. Zextai pulled up the files on human scientific requests. They wanted information about Corvani energy weapons, shield generators, faster-than-light drives, and medical techniques. At first glance, this seemed like normal scientific curiosity. But when he looked more closely, he realized the humans were asking about very specific technical details that would only be useful for military applications. He decided to investigate further. Using intelligence networks throughout human space, he began monitoring human industrial activity. What he discovered made him uncomfortable. Human manufacturing centers were working at maximum capacity, producing materials that could be used for either civilian or military purposes. New factories were being built at an incredible pace. Entire planets that had been agricultural worlds 6 months ago were now covered with industrial complexes. Most disturbing of all, human ships were making frequent trips to uninhabited star systems. When Corvani scouts investigated these systems, they found new mining operations and construction projects that had not been there before. Zextai brought his concerns to Admiral Kethvar. "Admiral, I believe the humans may be preparing for war," he said, showing the Admiral his data. Kethvar looked at the information without apparent concern. "Intelligence officer, you are seeing threats where none exist. The humans are simply a growing civilization that wants to expand and improve their technology. This is natural behavior for any developing species. But, sir, the scale of their industrial expansion is unprecedented. They are building manufacturing capacity far beyond what they need for normal growth." The Admiral waved his hand dismissively. "Even if the humans are preparing military equipment, what difference would it make? Their technology is 50 years behind ours. They could build 10,000 ships and still pose no threat to a single Corvani battlecruiser." Zextai wanted to argue, but he had no proof that humans were actually planning to fight. All he had were suspicious patterns of behavior that could have innocent explanations. His doubts increased when the first border incident occurred. A Corvani patrol ship encountered 3 human vessels near a disputed star system. The human ships were supposedly conducting scientific research, but they were heavily armed for research vessels. When the Corvani captain ordered them to leave the area, the humans refused. The confrontation lasted only 10 minutes. Corvani weapons were indeed superior, and all 3 human ships were destroyed. But something about the battle troubled Zextai when he read the combat reports. The humans had not tried to escape when they realized they could not win. Instead, they had fought with desperate intensity, focusing their attacks on the Corvani ship's weapon systems rather than trying to defend themselves. Even when their own ships were critically damaged, they continued firing until their vessels were completely destroyed. The Corvani patrol ship survived, but it suffered more damage than expected from such an uneven fight. Captain Horvex, who had commanded the patrol ship, submitted an unusual report. He wrote that human tactics were unlike anything he had seen before. The humans seemed to accept their own destruction as long as they could damage their enemy as much as possible before dying. "They fought like they wanted to die," the captain wrote. "But they also fought like they wanted to teach us something about what killing them would cost." Zexatai read this report 3 times. He had never heard of any species that approached combat with such a mindset. Most intelligent creatures fought to survive, not to inflict maximum damage while accepting defeat. He decided to research human military history. What he found made him even more uncomfortable. Humans had been fighting wars on their homeworld for thousands of years. They had developed weapons and tactics specifically designed to kill other humans. Their military philosophy seemed to be based on the idea that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to pay a high enough price. Most disturbing of all, humans had a concept they called Pyrrhic victory, winning a battle at such great cost that the victory was actually worse than losing. This suggested that humans understood that sometimes destroying your enemy was less important than making sure your enemy could not easily destroy you. Zextai began to suspect that the peaceful negotiations and friendly cooperation were not what they seemed. Perhaps the humans were buying time while they prepared for a war they knew was coming. But when he tried to share these concerns with his superiors, they dismissed his worries. The humans were weak, they said. The humans were cooperative, they said. The humans knew better than to fight the mighty Corvani Empire. Zextai hoped they were right. But deep in his mind, a small voice was beginning to whisper that maybe, just maybe, everyone else in the galaxy had been right to fear these strange creatures after all. The Corvani war fleet entered human space 6 months after the border incident. Zextai watched from the intelligence center as hundreds of powerful warships moved toward their first target, a human colony system called New Perth. Admiral Kethvar was confident. The humans had rejected all demands for surrender, which meant the Corvani Empire would take what it wanted by force. Intelligence reports showed that New Perth had only a small defensive fleet and 2 million civilian inhabitants. "This will be over quickly," the admiral announced to his staff. "The humans will see our strength and realize they cannot resist." But when the Corvani fleet arrived at New Perth, they found an empty system. Every human ship was gone. Every space station had been abandoned. The planet's cities were deserted with no signs of life anywhere. It was as if 2 million people had simply vanished. "Where did they go?" Admiral Kethvar demanded. Zextai studied the sensor readings. "Sir, there are signs that massive evacuation ships were here recently. The humans must have moved their entire population to another system." The admiral looked frustrated. "Then we will move to the next target." The same thing happened at the next system, and the next. Every human colony had been evacuated before the Corvani arrived. It was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. After 2 weeks of finding empty systems, the fleet finally encountered human resistance at a mining colony called Hadley's Rock. But this was not the kind of battle anyone expected. The humans had not left behind a normal defense force. Instead, they had converted the asteroid mining stations into weapons. Rocks and metal ore became missiles fired by magnetic accelerators. Mining lasers became cutting beams that sliced through ship armor. Even the ore processing plants had been turned into bomb factories. The Corvani fleet destroyed all the human installations, but it took 3 days and cost them 12 ships. For a mining colony that should have fallen in minutes. "How did they turn civilian equipment into military weapons so quickly?" Velkara asked as she reviewed the battle reports. Zextai did not have a good answer. The modifications to the mining equipment showed understanding of Corvani ship design that humans should not have possessed. The problems got worse as the fleet moved deeper into human space. Every captured system became a nightmare to hold. Human resistance fighters appeared from nowhere, attacking supply convoys and communication stations. They used captured Corvani weapons and seemed to understand Corvani tactics better than some Corvani soldiers. The humans never fought fair. They hid in asteroid fields and attacked from ambush. They used suicide bombers who flew damaged ships directly into Corvani vessels. They even sent false surrender signals to lure Corvani ships into weapon range, then detonated hidden explosives. Worst of all, they were learning from every encounter. In the first month, Human fighters used simple projectile weapons that barely scratched Corvani armor. By the second month, they had developed energy weapons based on captured Corvani technology. By the third month, they were using improved versions of Corvani weapons that were actually more effective than the originals. "How is this possible?" Admiral Kethvar asked during a staff meeting. "Our weapons took centuries to develop." Commander Yexathera, the fleet's chief engineer, looked worried. "Sir, we have captured several human research facilities. Their approach to technology development is completely different from ours. Where we spend decades testing each improvement, they build prototypes and test them in actual combat. They learn faster because they accept higher risks." Zextai had been studying captured human equipment and documents. What he found was deeply disturbing. Humans were not just copying Corvani technology. They were improving it in ways that Corvani engineers had never considered. Human scientists had taken Corvani energy shield designs and made them 30% more efficient. They had modified Corvani medical equipment to work on human biology, then made it work better on Corvani biology too. Most shocking of all, they had created hybrid technologies that combined human and Corvani principles in ways that neither species had thought possible. The war dragged on for 8 months. The Corvani fleet, which was supposed to have conquered human space in weeks, was now fighting for every system and losing ships faster than they could be replaced. Then came the day that changed everything for Zextai personally. He was assigned to a special mission with Commander Teklon, an old friend from the Intelligence Academy. Their job was to investigate reports of human super soldiers in the Kepler 442 system. According to Corvani scouts, humans in that system had stopped using vehicles and weapons. Instead, they were fighting with their bare hands and somehow winning against fully armed Corvani soldiers. The reports seemed impossible, but 3 separate sources had confirmed them. Zextai and Teklon took a stealth ship to investigate. They found the human base hidden inside a large asteroid. Using remote sensors, they watched human soldiers training in a zero-gravity environment. The humans had changed themselves. Their bodies were larger and stronger than normal humans. Their skin had a metallic sheen that suggested some kind of armor integration. Their movements were faster and more precise than any biological creature should be able to achieve. "By the ancestors," Teklon whispered. "They have turned themselves into living weapons." As they watched, one of the enhanced humans lifted a piece of metal that would have taken 3 normal Corvani to move. Another moved so quickly that the camera could barely track him. A third one seemed to be communicating with the others without speaking, as if they were connected by some kind of mental link. "We need to report this immediately," Zextai said. But as they prepared to leave, alarms started sounding throughout their ship. Somehow the humans had detected them. The enhanced human soldiers moved through space without protective suits, using built-in thrusters to fly directly toward the Corvani ship. They carried weapons that appeared to be grown from their own bodies rather than manufactured separately. The battle was brutal and short. The enhanced humans were incredibly difficult to kill, even with advanced Corvani weapons. They seemed to feel no pain and showed no fear. When their weapons were destroyed, they used their bare hands as weapons. When their hands were damaged, they used their teeth. Commander Teklon died trying to protect the ship's data core from a human soldier who had been shot 17 times but refused to stop fighting. Zextai watched his friend fall and felt something break inside his chest. These were not the same creatures that had sat politely in diplomatic meetings. These were predators that had transformed themselves into something beyond normal biology. They had taken the worst aspects of war and made themselves into living embodiments of those aspects. As Zextai escaped in an emergency pod, he realized that every fearful report about humans had been completely accurate. They were not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that treated war as a problem to be solved no matter what the cost, and they were very, very good at solving problems. The order to retreat came 18 months after the war began. Admiral Kethvar's voice was hollow as he announced to the fleet that they were withdrawing from human space. "This is a strategic repositioning," he said, but everyone knew the truth. The mighty Corvani Empire was running away from a species they had expected to conquer in weeks. Zextai sat in his quarters, staring at casualty reports. Half of the original fleet was gone. The remaining ships were damaged and low on supplies. But the worst part was not the losses. It was the realization that humans had been controlling the entire war from the beginning. Over the past month, Zextai had discovered the truth about human intelligence operations. Every piece of information the Corvani had received about human capabilities before the war had been carefully manipulated. Humans had deliberately appeared weaker, slower, and less organized than they actually were. The simple human technology that Corvani experts had analyzed was actually obsolete equipment that humans no longer used. The basic human tactics that intelligence reports described were training exercises for new recruits, not real military doctrine. Even the friendly cooperation during diplomatic meetings had been an act designed to make Corvani leaders overconfident. "They made us think we were hunting them," Velkara said during one of their intelligence briefings, "but they were actually hunting us." The evidence was overwhelming. Human ships that appeared to be cargo vessels were actually military transports carrying enhanced soldiers. Human research stations were actually weapons development facilities. Human civilian communications were actually coded military orders coordinating attacks across dozens of star systems. Most disturbing of all, the humans had been studying Corvani biology and psychology for years before first contact. They knew exactly how Corvani leaders would react to different types of information. They had predicted every major decision the Corvani Empire would make. Desperate to understand how they had been so completely deceived, Zextai began researching human history in detail. What he found explained everything. Humans had not developed space travel to explore the galaxy peacefully. They had developed it to escape their own planet, which they had turned into a training ground for warfare. Earth's history was an endless series of conflicts. Humans had fought wars over territory, resources, ideas, and sometimes just because they were bored. They had developed thousands of different ways to kill each other, then improved those methods over thousands of years. But the most important discovery was that humans did not fight wars the way other species did. Most intelligent creatures fought until one side surrendered or was completely destroyed. Humans fought until they had learned everything possible about their enemy, then used that knowledge to develop new ways of fighting. Every human war had made them better at fighting the next war. They studied their enemies not just to defeat them, but to understand them completely. They learned languages, customs, psychology, and weaknesses. They practiced adapting to new threats until adaptation became instinctive. When humans finally left Earth and met other species, they brought 10,000 years of military experience with them. Every alien they encountered became a new subject of study, a new source of knowledge about how different types of beings could be fought and defeated. This explained why so many species feared humans. It was not because humans were cruel or evil. It was because humans approached every new relationship as a potential conflict, and they were very good at preparing for conflicts. The war took another devastating turn when humans revealed their true technological capabilities. The ships that attacked Corvani positions in the final months of fighting were not improved versions of captured Corvani technology. They were completely new designs that combined human engineering principles with technologies from dozens of different species. Human vessels could change their configuration during battle, transforming from fast scouts to heavy battleships as the situation required. Their weapons adapted to whatever defenses they encountered, shifting frequency and power to exploit weaknesses in real time. Their armor repaired itself using nanotechnology that the Corvani had never seen before. Most shocking of all, human soldiers had become something beyond traditional biology. The enhanced warriors Zextai had encountered were just the beginning. Humans were now using genetic modification, cybernetic implants, and artificial intelligence to create fighters that were perfectly designed for specific types of combat. Fighting humans in space required different enhancements than fighting them on planets. Fighting human vehicles required different modifications than fighting human infantry. The humans had created specialized soldiers for every possible type of warfare, and they could produce new types of soldiers faster than enemies could develop countermeasures. But the final revelation came when Zextai discovered the scope of human operations across the galaxy. The war with the Corvani was not an isolated conflict. Humans had been secretly communicating with dozens of species throughout local space. They had been sharing technology, tactics, and intelligence with anyone who was willing to fight against empires like the Corvani. Every species that had sent fearful reports about humans had also received human assistance against their own enemies. The Zelani had human advisors helping them resist pirate attacks. The Minari had human weapons defending their colonies. The Gorath, who had been conquered by humans, were now working as human allies in exchange for their freedom and technological advancement. Humans were not trying to build an empire in the traditional sense. They were building a network of independent allies who shared information and resources. Every species that joined this network became stronger, while every empire that opposed it found itself fighting not just humans, but a constantly growing coalition of different alien races working together. As the Corvani fleet retreated toward their home systems, they found themselves being followed by ships from 7 different species. All of them were using human-designed technology and human-trained tactics. The hunters had become the hunted. Admiral Kethvar called for peace negotiations, but the humans responded with a simple message: unconditional surrender, or we continue this war until your empire no longer exists. Zextai realized that humans were not interested in conquest for its own sake. They were interested in eliminating threats to their vision of how the galaxy should work. And their vision apparently included the complete destruction of any empire that tried to dominate other species by force. The Corvani Empire had ruled local space for 10,000 years. It had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. Its military might had been unquestioned for millennia, and now it was about to be destroyed by creatures who had been in space for less than a century. As Zextai prepared for what would likely be the final battle of his civilization, he finally understood why every species in the galaxy either feared or respected humans. They were not just another alien race. They were something far more dangerous than any empire or army. They were a species that had turned the concept of warfare itself into a weapon. The human fleets arrived at the Corvani homeworld 3 months after the peace negotiations failed. Zextai watched from the observation deck of the command station as hundreds of ships appeared at the edge of the star system. But these were not the same vessels that had fought the Corvani fleet in human space. These ships came from dozens of different species, all flying together in perfect coordination. Humans had not come to conquer the Corvani homeworld. They had come to liberate it. Admiral Kethvar opened communication channels, expecting to negotiate surrender terms. Instead, the lead human ship broadcast a message to the entire planet. Citizens of the Corvani Empire, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Alliance Fleet. We have not come to destroy your world or enslave your people. We have come to free you from the government that has been oppressing you and your neighbors for 10,000 years. Any Corvani civilian who wishes to live in peace will be protected. Any Corvani military personnel who lays down their weapons will be treated with honor. Any Corvani leader who refuses to surrender will be removed from power. Zextai recognized the voice. Admiral Chen had been the polite diplomat who sat in peaceful meetings 2 years ago. Now she commanded the most powerful fleet in local space. The battle for the Corvani homeworld lasted only 6 hours. It was not because the Corvani defenders were weak. The homeworld's defense systems were the most advanced in the Empire, and the Corvani fleet fought with desperate courage. The battle was short, because the attacking forces were unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Human ships fought alongside Zilani scouts, Minari heavy cruisers, and Gorath assault vessels. Each species contributed their own strengths to the battle, while human coordinators made sure every ship knew exactly what role it needed to play. When Corvani energy shields proved effective against human weapons, Gorath kinetic missiles broke through the shields so human energy beams could finish the targets. When Corvani fighters tried to attack in groups, Zilani scout ships separated them so Minari gunships could destroy them individually. But the most shocking thing was not the tactical coordination. It was seeing Gorath soldiers fighting to free the same species that had enslaved the Gorath homeworld 50 years earlier. Zextai watched a group of human and Gorath Marines working together to disable a Corvani weapons platform. The Gorath warrior was 3 times larger than his human partner, but they moved like parts of the same organism. When the human was injured by debris, the Gorath carried him to safety. When the Gorath's weapon was damaged, the human shared his ammunition. These were species that should have been enemies. The Gorath had every reason to hate anything connected to the Corvani Empire. But here they were, risking their lives to capture Corvani military installations intact rather than simply destroying them. "Why are they not killing us?" Velkara asked as they watched the enemy forces advance through the city. Zextai did not have an answer. Every military doctrine he knew said that conquering armies should eliminate resistance as quickly as possible. Instead, the human-led coalition was going out of their way to avoid civilian casualties and preserve infrastructure. The answer came when the command station was finally captured. Zextai and his staff surrendered without firing a shot. They were taken prisoner by a mixed unit of human and alien soldiers who treated them with surprising courtesy. Instead of being executed or tortured, they were brought to a temporary holding facility where they found hundreds of other Corvani military personnel. All of them were alive. All of them had been fed and given medical attention. All of them were confused about why their captors were treating them so well. Admiral Chen herself came to speak with the prisoners. She stood before them without guards or weapons, addressing them as if they were honored guests rather than defeated enemies. "I know many of you are wondering why you are still alive," she began. "Your government told you that other species are inferior to the Corvani, that you had the right to rule over them because you were stronger and more advanced. But strength and technology do not give anyone the right to dominate others." She gestured to the mixed group of humans and aliens who had captured the station. "Every species you see here was oppressed by the Corvani Empire at some point. But we did not come here to get revenge. We came here to make sure that no species will ever be oppressed by anyone again." Zextai raised his hand. "Admiral, what will happen to us?" Chen looked at him directly. "That depends on what you choose to do next. You can accept exile to a neutral world where you will live comfortably but have no political power. Or you can help us build something better than what the Empire created." "Help you do what?" "Help us create a galactic community where different species work together as equals instead of one species ruling over all the others." Zextai thought about everything he had learned over the past 2 years. Humans had defeated the most powerful empire in local space, not by becoming better conquerors, but by convincing other species to work together. They had won the war not through superior technology, but through superior cooperation. "Why do you want our help?" he asked. Admiral Chen smiled. "Because the Corvani are not evil. Your empire did terrible things, but your people are intelligent and capable. The galaxy will be better if Corvani knowledge and skills are used to help everyone instead of controlling everyone." Over the following weeks, Zextai learned about the new system humans were creating. The Terran Alliance was not a traditional empire with one species in charge. It was a federation where each member species governed itself while working together on common problems. Humans provided military protection and technological advancement. Other species contributed their own expertise in different areas. The Zelani managed trade and communication networks. The Minari specialized in manufacturing and engineering. The Gorath served as peacekeepers and security forces. Former Corvani territories were divided among the species that had been living there before the Empire conquered them. Corvani colonists could stay and become citizens of the new governments, or they could relocate to worlds that remained under Corvani control. Most surprisingly, humans were offering to share their most advanced technologies with all Alliance members, including former enemies. The same genetic enhancement techniques that had created super soldiers could also cure diseases and extend lifespans. The same nanotechnology that repaired warships could also clean polluted environments and improve agriculture. After much consideration, Zextai chose integration over exile. He became a cultural liaison, helping Corvani civilians adapt to the new political system. His job was to explain to his own people why the Alliance treated them as equals instead of conquered subjects, and to help humans understand Corvani customs and concerns. 5 years later, Zextai stood in the same observation deck where he had watched the final battle. But now he was watching something completely different. A group of young Corvani, humans, and other species were playing together in the station's recreation area. They had all been born after the war ended, and to them, the idea that different species might be enemies was completely foreign. A young Corvani child was teaching a human child how to use Corvani mathematics to solve a puzzle. A Gorath teenager was helping both of them reach something on a high shelf. They switched between different languages without thinking about it, and they shared their food and toys as naturally as breathing. Velkara, who had also chosen integration, joined Zextai at the observation window. "Do you ever regret our choice?" she asked. Zextai thought about the question seriously. The old Corvani Empire was gone forever. His people would never again be the dominant force in local space. Many Corvani still lived on their homeworld, but they now governed themselves as part of the Alliance rather than ruling over other species. But the galaxy was more peaceful than it had ever been. Wars between species had virtually stopped. Technology was advancing faster than ever because knowledge was being shared instead of hoarded. Even former enemies were working together to solve problems that no single species could handle alone. "No," he said finally. "I do not regret it." As he watched the children play, Zextai thought about the lesson humans had taught the galaxy. They had not become famous because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species among the stars. They had become famous because they understood something that no other species had figured out. The real strength came not from defeating your enemies, but from turning your enemies into friends. Every species in the galaxy either feared or revered humans, just as all the early reports had said. But now Zextai finally understood why. They had met the only species that waged war not to destroy, but to build something better from the ashes.